The 49ers initial roster, as Kyle Shanahan points out, this is not the final roster, has been set. So what are the strengths and weaknesses? A little deeper dive into the roster and how it stacks up versus the NFC West and maybe those teams the 49ers will be vying for playoff spots in 2023. Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all of the everydayers out there. Make sure you are one. Just subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when we do live podcasts like this one. Hit the thumbs up. We appreciate you. And we appreciate all the everydayers listening in your vehicles, maybe in the mornings, that don't join us ever on the live YouTube pods. Fonzie G in the house. Love it, Fonzie. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Croc, let's get in the 49ers roster a little bit and maybe stack this up against the NFC West, against teams like the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, maybe the Green Bay Packers, right? Some teams that the 49ers might be battling with for the 1 seed in the NFC, and maybe some other dark horse teams. Who knows? We'll see how you like the rest of the NFC, Croc. But we definitely got to check out these final rosters, or the initial final, the first finals for the 49ers and some of the other teams in the West. So let's go through the 49ers roster first, because we didn't really dive deep into it yesterday because we were still talking about Kyle Shanahan and the quarterbacks and Trey Lance stuff. And now it's time to get a little bit more focused on the season and into game week. And hopefully guys like Nick Bosa show up, and hopefully some of the injured players right now that are banged up for the 49ers jump into action, like Talanoa Hufanga and George Kittle. And so those are some pretty important names that I'm naming right now that potentially might not be available for week 1. But beyond that, Croc, let's start with the quarterbacks. Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, and Brandon Allen. And again, this isn't a quarterback podcast. We're not going to talk a lot about it. Sam Darnold's a good backup. Like, whatever you thought about the Trey Lance debacle and everything, I think this is a former starter, veteran. I think he's a good backup there. And, man, I feel good about Brock Purdy. And if he's anything near what we saw at the end of last year, the 49ers are going to be in really good shape there, even when you stack up against some big names in the NFC West, like Matthew Stafford and Kyler Murray, who's injured to start the year, and Geno Smith.
Fun fact that I found out today on social media: Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, and Sam Darnold all have the same middle name. All 3 of their middle names is Richard. How random is that? Now, I didn't believe it when I first heard it, so I actually Googled it, and sure enough, on their Wikipedia, all middle names Richard. Has nothing to do with how they play, but I just thought that was something that was just very what are the odds? But as far as being a backup quarterback, I think Sam Darnold is kind of that ideal guy that has some ability. Does he have enough ability to where he can string together a game or two if need be? I think so. Obviously, knowing a little bit more what you're getting from Brock Purdy as a quarterback, I think we're feeling more and more comfortable with that, what this offense is going to look like. I think he still works the short areas better than kind of those deep or far hash type throws outside the numbers. But as we've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo, you don't have to be that guy. Just do your, what people would call dink and dunking, all right? But do those throws, continue to move the sticks, make a play here and there with your legs. And when we get into the 49ers weaponry that they actually have, I think you'll be more than comfortable with where this team is and how they stack up against some of the other big dogs in the conference.
I think nationally, some people don't believe as much in Brock Purdy, probably because they haven't seen a lot of them, and we haven't seen a lot of Brock Purdy, truthfully, Croc. Where do you think you are confident that he is? Because I'm confident already. I've seen enough from Brock Purdy. He's in that Kirk Cousins tier, right? That Jimmy G, Derek Carr tier. I'd be shocked if all of a sudden he's a worse quarterback than that, because I've seen too much good from him already. My question is, can he elevate to the next tier because where he's at physically? And the 49ers can win a ton of games, obviously, if they have a quarterback in that tier, as they've already shown.
It feels like where he's at might just be what he is, at least from an ability standpoint. Now, where can he improve? Just continue to see the field well or better. And he obviously already sees the field very well, but being able to just continue to execute some of these throws at a high level that are there and just know to kind of go there. I was watching JT O'Sullivan's breakdown, and Deebo Samuel had this deep comeback, and Brock Purdy kind of threw the ball, airmailed it a little bit out of bounds. Well, if he would have kind of let it rip over the middle, he had a big catch and run opportunity for George Kittle. So just being more consistent with not missing those things, and everybody's going to miss reads here and there, but the more he's consistent with just hitting those type of throws, those type of passes, and seeing it and not bypassing it or coming off of it too quick, I think that's when we're going to see him actually be able to take his game to another level than he even did last year. So I think there will be growth, maybe not so much in where we would probably like him to really threaten teams, but being more efficient in like that area where he does win. I think that's the thing that's more important.
There's some reception perception charting on Brock Purdy that I want to get into later next week as we start previewing this football game. And I've got a lot of great stats and some good stuff from my guy, Matt Williamson, who covers the Steelers too, about this matchup and Steelers and 49ers. So looking forward to breaking down the matchup against the Steelers much further. I like the 49ers group against anybody at quarterback even. I mean, I know Brock Purdy's the last pick in the draft, and I know it's been a small sample, but I like the 49ers even at quarterback versus anybody in the West with what they're rolling into this season, especially considering the injury and what Matthew Stafford's working with in LA.
I think with Matthew Stafford, especially because there might be some injury concerns. We talked about some of the comments from his wife, and she probably like, man, like this guy needs to just kind of retire. He's probably banged up at home. But we'll get to the Seattle Seahawks. I don't want to use the word scare me, but I am on high alert with what they can potentially be this year. And Geno Smith obviously had the best year by far of any season he's ever had in his career. But it was high level. Like, I feel like if you plug him into the 49ers and he does that same thing, what kind of quarterback are we talking about? Like, how is Geno Smith viewed then? Because that would have been probably the best season of any quarterback in 49ers history with the way that he was able to play.
Yeah, he was the best quarterback in the division last year. Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't really close. It's talking about, a full season's worth of play. He's got some playmakers too. So let's look at that for the 49ers. 49ers wide receivers. We know Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, the rookie Ronnie Bell made the team. Danny Gray has been put on that IR to return, as I suspected, and Ray McLeod injured, but not put on the IR to return, which makes me think the 49ers think he will be back earlier than, say week 4 or 5 or something like that. So maybe, and who knows, maybe McLeod even comes back for week 1 and is ready to go. But those are the 5 active wide receivers right now for the 49ers. More on the practice squad. Tight end, George Kittle, Charlie Warner, Ross Dwelly, 7th round rookie Braden Willis. And then at running back, you've got Kyle Juszczyk, the OW at fullback, and Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, Ty Davis Price. That's a pretty darn good group of playmakers for Brock Purdy to point guard around, right, and get the ball to. And it's the best group in the division.
It is. I'd say that when you say with that much confidence, it is the best group in the division. But the Seahawks, again, because DK Metcalf, he's a monster in itself, and he can explode at any time. Tyler Lockett, he's a terrific receiver as well. They went and got Jackson Smith and Jigma. Like, that's their slot receiver. He was the best receiver in this class this past season. And if you ask Garrett Wilson, who was Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Chris Olave, like, who was the best of the trio when they were all at Ohio State, they tell you Jackson Smith and Jigma, like, he was the best guy. He was the most athletic of the 3. I don't know if they're just talking, but clearly they valued him very high, and he went very high in the draft. So you got him, and then they got Kenneth Walker, and then they drafted Zach Charbonnet. So, I mean, we talk about the 49ers weapons, and I think they are more solidified with what they are and who they are and what their roles are. But when I look at the Seattle Seahawks, and again, if Geno does what he did again, that's a team who on paper, or at least the production of it, will kind of rival what the 49ers have.
They can hang. They're a talented group, and they've added a lot of talent to that group. And the way that Geno Smith played last year, if he does that again, then look out. There's a 2-horse race in the West, right, with the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers. And again, look at the other teams, the Cardinals and the Rams. Cooper Kupp has got a hamstring, and he's about all they got. Cam Akers, And, the rookie Michael Wilson from Stanford's going to start with Hollywood Brown. And you got the gadget guy and Rondale Moore in Arizona. Like those groups just can't hang with what the 49ers and Seahawks have right now.
And not only do you have to hang from an offensive standpoint, but also a defensive standpoint. And I think that's where the 49ers, at least traditionally, have kind of separated themselves from even like the Seahawks with what we saw last year. Their defense really just can't do anything against the 49ers for the most part, right? And when you look at the 49ers and what they're able to do against these opposing offenses, they've been able to kind of throttle them a little bit, especially if there's any kind of chink in their armor. So what I expected to look like when the 49ers play Arizona Cardinals, like expect the 49ers to demolish them, because on top of having to try to compete with them offensively is like, well, also your defense has to try to, get some stops because the 49ers will. Like that is tough. The Seahawks are the one team because they're young, like they've been young. Do they take the next step? Now, I don't want to act like the Seahawks are just this like juggernaut in the waiting, but they're a well-coached team. You have Pete Carroll. He's able to get the most out of his guys. So it's kind of their turn to try to take a shot at the 49ers. I still have more confidence in what the 49ers are, especially if Nick Bosa is out there. But the Seahawks are the ones where I'm like, I got, sleeping with one eye open and is looking right at the Seahawks and Pete Carroll.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk more about the Seahawks because they stack up well in some other position groups as well. And the offensive line is one of those next. Defensive side of the ball as well. We're going to look at some other teams in the NFC that the 49ers stack up against as we get closer to game week in the 2023 NFL season. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets after betting $5. So let me say this again. New customers can bet $5 at America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed no matter if that first $5 bet wins or loses. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. It is safe. You get paid when you win, and you can bet on everything. Spreads, player props. I love building my own parlay at FanDuel. The website is so easy to use. I love navigating it and finding all the bets, tons of NFL bets, more and more coming all the time. And not only can you bet week 1 against the Steelers, you can bet week 17 if you want to bet those 49ers to win all season long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Looking at the offensive line of the San Francisco 49ers, they have left tackle Trent Williams, left guard Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel at center, Spencer Burford at right guard, Colton McKivitz at right tackle. No surprises there. A little bit of a shocker that Nick Zakelj made the roster, backup left guard, and it was pointed out to me that he is roommates of Brock Purdy, or at least he was last year. I think Brock Purdy's getting married, right? I don't think he has a roommate anymore, but maybe he does have an adult roommate still. Maybe that there's a closeness there. Maybe, and look, if having your 53rd man on the roster makes your quarterback better, that's okay to me. I just don't want to see him whiffing blocks and getting that same quarterback hurt. Jalen Moore, offensive tackle, Matt Pryor, pretty much those guys are left and right tackle backups, not so much of a swing tackle situation, it looks like, for the San Francisco 49ers. And then John Feliciano, the 9th offensive lineman there, backup center for the 49ers, can play some guard as well. And this is one that's interesting because they have the best offensive lineman in the NFL, Croc, and Trent Williams, some solid players, some young players like Burford and Banks that you hope can take another step and improve on what they did last year in their first starting action. But the Seahawks have a really good young group of offensive linemen. And actually in Arizona, the one group they actually have that's pretty decent, they're actually trading away offensive linemen, is that offensive line they just spent a first-round pick on.
Trading away offensive line and adding guys like El Manning.
And Ishmael, both, right?
Yeah.
Claim both of those guys from the 49ers. So we'll see if the 49ers will end up facing El Manning if he's actually playing for the Arizona Cardinals this year if he's just more in a reserve role as a rookie, and what position he'll play, because I thought he should have been playing left guard. He was playing left tackle for the 49ers in preseason, and maybe not showing anything inside. The 49ers thought they could hide him, and they weren't able to onto the practice squad. But man, that young, again, that the group of, don't sleep on how good the Seahawks could be this year. And it all boils down to a repeat performance from Geno Smith, but they've got a lot of talent in a lot of places, and offensive lineman is another one.
You look at those guys that they got, and God, was it Cross, the left tackle they got in the top 10, and then they got Abraham Lucas in the third round.
Yep.
And you saw them kind of taper off just a little bit towards the end of the season, kind of hitting that rookie wall a little bit, but they started to rebound, and they are viewed as a better group right there, especially if they kind of build around those guys in the trenches. But they're trying to take the pressure off of them by being able to lean more on the run game, and then have Geno do some, big throws off of the play action and be efficient like he was. But, you talked about them, and I think because the 49ers just beat up on them so bad, we forget kind of the history of the 49ers against the Seattle Seahawks and what that traditionally has been over the last decade. And they're just not a team that's going to go away. I know we're going to hear a lot about, like, guys they're not that good. They're not that good. And it's like, man, I gotta see it to believe it this year, because it almost feels like they're primed to take that next step. Almost like we've seen from, like the Cardinals one year, where they start off hot, and all of a sudden, and it's like, can the Seahawks be that, but continue it throughout a whole year?
And never sleep on a Pete Carroll coach team, because
where he went to college. So,
well, that's true, and he's done it with now completely different 53-man rosters. I take it back. Bobby Wagner's still there. He came back again this year, so we'll see Bobby Wagner on the defensive side of the ball.
Do you know where he came from?
UOP, right?
UOP, baby, Stockton, California. He was a player there and then a coach. That's where he got his start with John Gruden and Hugh Jackson.
Well, my alma mater was also referred to as the cradle of coaches at one point in time. Guys like Mike Holmgren and Andy Reid, San Francisco State alum. San Francisco State coaching alum. Yeah. Big time coaches from California back in the day, Croc. And now I don't know if either one of those schools have football programs anymore.
Well, UOP definitely doesn't. They even got rid of their football field.
No, you put more classrooms there, right?
They need to bring the 49ers back for training camp.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I think they said it was too hot.
It is sort of like almost, it's so hot that it's not just that it's uncomfortable, it's dangerously hot.
You got a nice little Delta breeze. This is easy for me to deal with, because it is hot, but it's just hot. That Arkansas stuff I dealt with for 3 years, that was different, because it was 85 degrees, but then you look at the heat index and it's like, feels like it's 110 and it's wet.
Yeah, that heat, man, I don't miss it, especially when you go from the bay back into it in the valley and you hit that and it's like, oh, dang, okay. Yeah, that's some real hot stuff there. All right. Getting back to the San Francisco 49ers roster, let's take a peek at the defensive side of the ball here a little bit, Croc. And we're not going to talk much special teams, because I don't even want to go there, to be honest with you, right now. But that's where the 49ers might have a little bit of an issue, not knowing who their kicker is going to be. It looks like they did bring in a kicker, and I already forgot the guy's name that they brought in. Who did they signed a kicker?
Is Cayeno or no? Somebody that. So here's the interesting thing with kickers, because I saw the guy. Sorry, we can't think of his name. While you're looking it up, I'll just talk about some of his stats. But his NFL numbers are: he's attempted 46 field goals. He's made 40 of them. That, to me, that sounds pretty good. That's like, all right, I had a year where I went 23-3. Then I had another year I went 23-3, and you would think you'd take that. So why is it so difficult, or when you have a guy that has done that well, right? Because look at 49ers kicker that just drafted, Jake Moody. Well, this guy over multiple years has missed 6 total kicks. Moody just missed 2 in just one preseason game. So why would you, when the difference between those guys is that small, why would you draft a guy as high?
That's a great question. I have no idea. Matthew Wright, by the way, former Steeler. Maybe they're just getting some Steelers intel, because they're still hopeful that the Jake Moody is going to be okay. And as I understand it, Matthew Wright is the kicker the 49ers had at practice. According to Matt Barrows here, just an observer, not signed yet. He may never sign. I think he might just be hanging out, and they'll sign him if they have to, because they'll have to make another transaction on the roster if they need to bring in a kicker, and Jake Moody's not able to play in week 1, but they're still optimistic that Moody might be able to kick. So who knows? Maybe Matthew Wright never actually officially gets signed, or maybe he ends up on the practice squad or something like that. So we'll see what happens with Matthew Wright, the kicker. Okay, next, Croc, let's talk defense, how that roster on the defensive side of the ball stacks up, and I have a feeling it's going to stack up pretty well against just about any team you throw at it. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sporting events, music, comedy, theater, and anything else you need tickets for near you. They have flash deals and last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, and that lowest price guarantee. So forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, and a whole lot more. Get images of your seats as well, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email to find those tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. When you take Nick Bosa, Croc, out of the 49ers defense, it changes the complexion of the whole stinking thing. And I think 49ers fans know, we don't have to tell them right now that it's pretty important to get Nick Bosa signed and in there. And I'm starting to get a little bit worried because the longer it goes, the less likely, and basically the fewer snaps you can project that Nick Bosa is going to play in a game against a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1. So obviously Bosa's there, and at some point Bosa's going to get signed. Confident there. When that will be, I don't know.
I wrote this situation off as something that would just get handled right away. And we expected him at the start of preseason to try it out on the field, maybe the opening day of camp.
Yeah, like
day
for something.
And it almost feels like when you listen to the coaches talk about it, or when you listen to John Lynch talk about it, they don't, just kind of reading their body language and their tone, it doesn't give me the confidence that he's signing any time soon. Now, you assume that he will because, the season's coming up. But the way that they talk about it, it's almost as if they don't really know. And that does scare me, because if you do take him away from the defense, what is it then? Because I've already talked about, I feel like they have a lot of good players. You have a special linebacker in Fred Warner, but I don't think there's there's not a whole lot of special talented guys on the defensive side of the ball. And you need Bosa to offset the fact that we don't know what Drake Jackson is and any rotation guy that might be there. It's not like you have these legit bookends. And you have two guys inside that rush well, but I feel like they rush better if you have Nick Bosa out there. So it's almost like he's the engine that makes everything go. And if he's not out there, that's a big part of what makes your defense so good. They lacked pass rush last year with him, and it was all on him.
Yeah, they need to get better. They need to get better on the other side anyway. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's a little scary.
And he'll make Javon Hargrave better. Is Hargrave, alone going to be a terror, a monster pass rusher, right? Or is he helped by the entire unit, which I'm sure he would be with someone like Nick Bosa out there, like he was helped with all the talent that was on that Philadelphia Eagles defensive line in recent years. So without Nick Bosa, taking him out of it, we could see a starting defensive end group of Cleveland Farrell and Drake Jackson, or maybe Drake Jackson rotating in after someone like Kerry Hyder that's starting at defensive end. On the inside, it's going to be Hargrave and Eric Armstead, solid group with Javon Kinlaw, Javon Hargrave, and then Kevin Givens and Kalia Davis rounding out that interior depth. And then Kerry Hyder and Austin Bryant on the outside, the backups for the 49ers there. And I have a feeling it'll be Clelin Ferrell with Bosa in there. So Ferrell, I think, is going to be the starter. But you start counting up pressures and sacks, it's a different group without Nick Bosa in there.
This isn't a DeForest Buckner situation, right? Like, there's no way that's what it is. Now, if you would have asked me before the Buckner situation happened, I would have been like, what? DeForest Buckner, there's no way. Right? So I would have said kind of the same thing. I think Nick Bosa obviously is like, as good as Buckner was, Bosa's a tier up ahead of Buckner. But I don't know what not to expect with this regime now. So I don't think that they would trade him away.
I was meaning to ask you that earlier on in the week, Croc, because I was thinking that. And look, there was this like Reddit report about Nick Bosa maybe getting traded, and they brought up I think it was Justin Herbert. And it's like it can't. That's not happening. It can't. It's not possible to happen. Herbert just signed a new deal. He'd have like $100 million cap hit for the Chargers. Like, we're living in fantasy land there. I have no doubt, though, that teams probably are like vultures out there and have called the 49ers, right? And so where the 49ers answer what Kyle Shanahan talked about yesterday, said, nope, we are not trading him. That is not something that is an option that we're going to do. I have a feeling if there was ever something like that to be entertained, Croc, it would have to be so bad that he does the thing where he holds out for 8 weeks, then just shows up in enough time to accrue the season, plays the second half of the season, then bridges are burned. The fan base might even turn in a way that makes it more viable, and you're still trading for the same picks you would have traded for right now, and you still get at least a half a season of Nick Bosa. And by the way, the weeks he sits out, he doesn't get a game check, so you don't have to pay him for those weeks. So there's still some leverage on both sides, but it'll hurt. It's already, I think, it could potentially already be hurting the 49ers based on him not being able to play potentially a full load of snaps in a week one, even if he showed up tomorrow.
I don't want to know what a 49er football game is going to look like without him in the lineup.
I'd much rather play without Trent Williams or Brock Purdy even than Nick Bosa, to be honest with you, right? Maybe that's just me. I don't know, because he makes the rest of this unit better. 49ers linebackers are going to be fine, right? Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. You got Oren Burks, the starting strong side linebacker. There's going to be a lot of 2 linebacker sets, so it's going to be mostly the full-time guys are Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. You definitely don't want to lose Fred Warner as well, because backing him up is a 7th-round rookie who had a nice campaign in the preseason, but you don't want to throw that rookie on the field too much, I don't think, in regular season games. I think we might see guys like the backups, D. Winters, Jalen Graham, and Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles a lot more on special teams than we see them on defense this season. But Drake Greenlaw's had a lot of injuries as well. So D. Winters actually might be the most common player to see outside of the starters this year, if that continues for Drake Greenlaw.
Yeah, from How About Them Niners right now in the chat, he says, per Jack Hammer, and shout out to Jack Hammer, does a great job covering the 49ers. Per sources, Bosa and company are meeting over dinner with the 49ers soon to iron out details and come to an agreement/decision. What the hell does soon mean when you have a game next week? I mean, how soon is soon enough?
Saturday night, let's go.
It's like, shouldn't this conversation had already been had? Like, how important? And again, I'm assuming that they're taking it. This is top priority, as it should be. It's Nick Bosa. It's arguably the best player on your team. Like, when are you meeting? Like, what are you waiting for? Why has to come to an agreement decision? They're acting like it's a husband and wife trying to figure out what they want to eat for dinner.
Yeah,
Hey, when you get off work, we'll talk about it. Maybe we won't talk about it today. We'll put it off for a few more days and see when we want to talk about it. Like, no, dude, like Nick, this is about Nick Bosa, and all of a sudden over dinner you're going to come to an agreement on who's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback ever. Like, all it takes is getting the dinner that one time, and you can come to an agreement on it.
I can't help you. I have no idea. It sounds like there hasn't been a lot of communication, and the start of the season is finally a reason that both sides have to say, look, we have to cross the finish line here. We have to finish this deal. So however far apart we are, we got to close that gap, because now it has to happen. And I know you didn't want to cave and we didn't want to cave, but we got to come together and get you on the football field. We got to finish this and get you paid, right? Because as soon as he hits the football field, that changes the entire dynamic of what Richard points out here in the back end of the 49ers, because Richard says, I believe Wilkes can manufacture pressure. I don't think Kyle Shanahan wants that. I think we've seen how that can be harmful to the secondary with fewer people in coverage. And if you don't get home, then that leaves you vulnerable to getting beat on the back end. And the 49ers have a good secondary, but it's a much better secondary when you're getting pressure with just 4. So that's
the 49ers have a good secondary for how it's intended on being used.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to sit off. We're going to play quarters. We're going to rush 4, maybe bring 5, maybe. And Bosa and company is going to get after the quarterback. We're going to have some stunts. And on the back end, you just do your job. If you have to bring more guys, you leave big holes so if you are bringing guys and they don't get there, there's going to be big catch and run opportunities unless you play man. And the 49ers, again, I talked about not having like these special secondary guys. They don't have this man coverage across the board type defense where you can start to send stuff and we're just going to tighten down the edge and bring a bunch of people. And there's not going to be any weakness. Like that's not what these guys' skill set is. They play off, they read, they keep things in front of them, they rally down, they tackle, and they understand their concepts. So I don't know if it's as simple as just bringing pressure because there's no Nick Bosa. I think that's going to leave you a little bit vulnerable on the back end. And we saw what happened with Kelly, the running back from the Chargers, and obviously like that was a run play. But what it looks like with the 49ers when they're in chase mode, they're not catching you. They don't have that kind of speed on the back end. So you don't want that to be a receiver where all of a sudden you're blitzing guys and you have guys coming from here and somebody catches a slant. And you know what it's going to look like? What Trent Sherfield looked like the first play of the game against the Miami Dolphins, where nobody was going to catch him. And he's not a blazer. Trent Sherfield is not a blazer. 49ers, they just don't have fast secondary guys. So I think it's a little difficult to change up how your defense was intended on running because there's no Nick Bosa. You have to get it done.
And you definitely want those 49ers secondary players in attack mode coming forward more so than retreating. And we've seen that with Talanoa Hufanga. His best ability is, seeing what's in front of him and going and getting it. He's got a Baker's cyst in his knee. Hopefully he is out there in week 1. If not, it's going to be the rookie Jair Brown, who's backing up at safety along with George Odom. Charvarius Ward, the starter on one side. It's odd that Diamador Lenore almost feels like he got demoted to nickel, and it looks like Ambry Thomas is going to be the starter now on the outside, even though it's because of Diamador Lenore's flexibility, right? As if he couldn't play nickel, he'd just be playing on the outside. So that's an interesting one there. And then you got Samuel Womack is the only other cornerback on the 49ers roster right now. Isaiah Oliver, the backup nickel there, which is still a weird one to me because that's a pretty high-paid nickel-only backup in Isaiah Oliver. Unless he ends up starting after all, which it doesn't seem like he's going to based on the preseason games.
Sign Bosa.
Sign Bosa. Make it so much easier on the rest of those guys. Who's got the next best defense in the division, Croc? Can anybody stack up to any of the 49ers position groups when Bosa is out there?
If Bosa is out there, the answer is no. I don't think anybody's really close. If Bosa is not out there, then they're kind of all the same a little bit. I mean, he makes that big of a difference.
On paper, the Seahawks secondary, Jamal Adams just came back, I believe, this week. I almost forgot he existed. What's he going to look like now after some injuries? Quandre Diggs in the back end as well with Jamal Adams and, of course, Tariq Woolen, and then first-round pick Devin Witherspoon. That has a chance to be a superstar backfield right there. But we still kind of have some unknowns in what Witherspoon's going to look like with his NFL career and what Jamal Adams is going to look like now in his latest addition for the Seattle Seahawks. But again, the Seattle Seahawks is the team that can kind of compete with the 49ers in a lot of these areas.
We keep bringing up the Seahawks. Again,
it's certainly not the Rams. I barely know any of the Rams' names in the secondary.
I barely know any other Rams players, period. I know they have Cooper Kupp, something's going on with him right now. He has like a hamstring injury, and then he came back too soon and re-aggravated it. So he's kind of like day-to-day right now. I mean, is he going to be playing week 2? And if he's not, who the hell are the rest of their receivers? Who's their running back? Quick.
Ben Skowronek at wide receiver. Don't sleep on him. You got Tutu Atwell, all of 149 pounds, soaking wet.
Who's their running back?
The rookie Puka Nacua. Cam Akers is at running back, along with the rookie from last year, the 5th rounder, Kyron Williams. They got Ronnie Rivers, Fresno State, right? Ronnie Rivers? He's an undrafted free agent out of, I believe, Fresno State, and they drafted a 6th rounder, Zach Evans. And Cam Akers almost saw his way off that roster before, too. So
that's why I'm surprised he's still there. I mean, they traded. I mean, I know they wanted to trade him, and then it's like, well, we can't trade you, so I guess we'll just keep you. And then now all of a sudden he's just back in their good graces, and he's their number 1 back.
Yeah. Look out for Russ Yeast, man. That's all I'm saying. Russ Yeast, special team extraordinaire of the Los Angeles Rams. I think he's backup safety. I don't think he's starting. But, man, that roster's in rough shape right now.
McVay should have stayed retired for this. Or whatever he was thinking about doing, he should have just did it.
Yeah, especially if there's any injuries to, and there already is with Kupp, but Donald and Stafford, that could go really bad.
Is this what they're going through with their roster? Is this solely because just going all in on these players like Jalen Ramsey and these guys, or is there something else to why they're in the shape that they are in right now?
So here's what's funny, because the 49ers and the Rams have done so well at adding all these extra late picks, and the 49ers have hit on them, and the Rams have not. Like, all these names are guys we're talking about, 5th rounders, 7th rounders. The 49ers, those guys became starters. For the Rams, you got Russ Yeast. And you got Logan Bruss, the 3rd rounder they drafted last year at guard. They needed help at guard. The first pick they had in the draft last year was a 3rd rounder. They drafted Russ Yeast, tore his ACL, then got cut this year. Never even played for the team. The Trey Sermon treatment.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So the depth is bad with that roster. And it just goes to show you how good the 49ers have done in the later rounds of their drafts. I mean, that is the key to the success of how this 49ers team is built, how amazing they've been there.
They've done a really good.
Real quick, just looking at rosters now. That's the 49ers' final roster. Cowboys, Eagles. Who hangs with the 49ers roster right now? On paper, you're power ranking these teams. How does it go?
Eagles hang with them. Now, here's the thing. If Brock Purdy just takes it just that one more step and Nick Bosa out there and everything's clicking, I think the 49ers should be at that one spot. Right now, you know, people are going to have that flipped because of the Eagles last year, and they went to the championship game. But, hell, Brock Purdy plays that whole game. That very well could be the San Francisco 49ers in there. And the 49ers heading into this year are viewed as the favorites from the NFC, right, if Purdy doesn't get hurt. So I think Purdy just, you know, showing more, or not even showing more, but just saying, hey, like what you saw last year, like that is who I am. I think people would start to view the 49ers as like, I mean, look at them. You got Debo, you got Ayuk, you have Kittle, you have Juszczyk, you have McCaffrey, you have Elijah Mitchell. I mean, you have Jordan Mason and all these. I mean, there's a lot going on there. And you throw a quarterback in there that's just really good. How are the 49ers not the favorites?
I mean, this is the way I'll put it for the Eagles. They already have the quarterback that's arrived.
Right.
And they have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, and Brandon Graham's still going, but they had the 1st rounder in Jalen Carter. Can he just go in there and fill the role that Javon Hargrave left, the 1st rounder from the year before, and Jordan Davis, all 340 pounds of him? You still got Fletcher Cox, and you got Hassan Reddick, and you got Josh Sweat coming off the edge, and you got Darius Slay on the back end of that defense. And so, like, there's a lot of talent everywhere. And Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, that's the best team. That's the best team. I apologize.
And if Philadelphia Eagles fans would come in and argue that they'll take A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert over Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle.
Yeah. That defense, too. We talked about the 49ers, and maybe there being some, like, holes in the defense if you send blitzes. They got guys on that back end that play man, and they're playmakers. James Bradbury and Darius Slay, like, they are legit corners.
Yeah.
That's a tough group. And
then I know we got to roll here, but real quick, let's just run through the Dallas Cowboys here, because this is not a team to be slept on either. Can Dak cut down on some of those interceptions? You got a more healthy version of Michael Gallup. They brought in Brandon Cooks now to go with CD Lamb. They got the Jalen Tolbert 3rd-round wide receiver from last year. You got Tony Pollard, more dynamic running back than they've had with Zeke, and now he gets to carry the full load there. And then they got the 5'5" version of Deuce Vaughn there backing him up. It looks like someone's kid got loose on the field, which I kind of like. It's kind of funny. And then Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence coming off the edge, right? They added Stephon Gilmore to the mix there with Trayvon Diggs in the secondary. It's not quite as I think it's not quite as solid top to bottom as 49ers Eagles are, but they got some difference makers and some playmakers on both sides of the ball there. Do the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, they do. That's going to be a tough team. And again, that's one of those teams. They can be explosive. They can put a lot of points on the board. Like the Seahawks, they're viewed a certain way just because the 49ers have beat them and knocked them out the playoffs the last 2 years.
Yep. And the 49ers can be better than both. The big question is quarterback.
Yeah.
Who exactly is Mr. Brock Richard Purdy?
Brock Richard Purdy. You'll know more, especially week 5 when you have to play the Dallas Cowboys in San Jose.
That's a big test. I think after 5 weeks, we will have a lot of questions answered about the San Francisco 49ers team. And hopefully it doesn't take 5 more weeks to get Nick Bosa signed. Let's get him in here. Is he flying to San Jose? Is he having dinner yet? Come on, somebody let us know. Someone's got to snap a photo of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Nick Bosa. Maybe even Joey's there. Who knows? No, Joey's doing his own thing. He's getting ready for a season. Maybe John Bosa, Nick's dad. Maybe he's there with the agent too. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on Locked On 49ers. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. We'll talk to you again next time, and it'll be game week. It's almost here. Week 1 of the 2023 season. Talk to you then. Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.